One small act of kindness changed their lives and cost her everything. When the world punished compassion, neither knew that hope was only waiting to return. Please do well to subscribe to this channel so that you won't miss any of our stories. Mercy Thompson had learned early in life that invisibility was a survival skill. If people did not notice you, they rarely bothered to hurt you. So she moved quietly through the world, head lowered, voice soft, footsteps careful. Each morning before the sun climbed over the city, Mercy rose from the narrow bed in the small servants' quarters behind the Whitmore mansion. The room smelled faintly of detergent and damp walls, but it was all she had, and she was grateful for it. Gratitude, after all, was cheaper than hope. She washed her face with cold water, tied her faded apron, and stepped into the grand house where crystal chandeliers glowed brighter than her future ever had. The Whitmore mansion was everything Mercy was not: polished, powerful, and admired. She scrubbed marble floors that reflected wealth she could never touch. She wiped fingerprints from glass tables where business deals were made that changed lives far above her pay grade. To the Whitmores, Mercy was just the maid. No last name, no story, no past worth knowing. Yet Mercy carried her past like a scar beneath her uniform. Years earlier, she had loved deeply and lost everything. Her husband, Samuel, had died in a factory accident when faulty equipment crushed his spine. The company blamed him. The investigation vanished. Mercy received a single envelope with condolences and nothing else. No compensation, no justice. Within months, grief drained her savings, and landlords were less patient than sorrow. Family members who had once warned her not to marry a poor man now used his death as proof that they had been right all along. One by one, doors closed. Mercy learned then that poverty was not just a lack of money. It was a lack of mercy from the world itself. Still, something inside her refused to die. Each afternoon, after finishing her chores, Mercy walked the same route home, past the old public school with its cracked walls and rusted gate. That was where she first noticed the boy. He sat alone near the fence, small and thin, his school uniform hanging loosely on his frame. The fabric was torn at the sleeves, and the collar was frayed beyond repair. One shoe had a hole at the toe, and when he shifted his feet, it flapped softly against the pavement. He never played with the other children. He never ran. He just waited. At first, Mercy told herself it was not her concern. The world was full of suffering, and she could not save everyone. But every day, the boy was there, waiting with eyes that carried hunger deeper than food. One afternoon, Mercy stopped walking. She stood a few feet away and spoke gently. "Why don't you go home after school?" The boy looked up, startled, as if adults rarely spoke to him. His eyes were dark and tired, far too old for a child his age. "I wait," he said. "For what?" Mercy asked. He hesitated, then answered honestly. "Sometimes people give food." Mercy felt something tighten in her chest. She opened her lunch bag and stared at the half sandwich and apple she had saved for herself. Her body needed it, but her heart needed something else more. She handed the food to him. The boy accepted it slowly, as if afraid it might disappear. "Thank you," he whispered. Mercy walked home hungry that day, but something warm followed her. She did not know it yet, but that moment was the first stitch in a bond that would test everything she believed about kindness and sacrifice. The next day, Mercy packed a little extra food, then the next. Soon, stopping by the school. Fence became part of her routine, as natural as breathing. The boy's name was Daniel Carter. He was 12 years old and lived in a crumbling house at the edge of town with his mother, who was sick and often unable to work. His father had vanished years earlier, leaving behind debt and silence. Daniel spoke of his life without bitterness, but Mercy could hear the weight in his words. School was his escape. He loved learning, loved the idea that knowledge might one day carry him somewhere better. Yet the world was not kind to children who showed up hungry and poorly dressed. Teachers praised his intelligence but rarely invested in him. Other students mocked his torn uniform. Mercy listened more than she spoke. She shared food and quiet encouragement. Slowly, she became Daniel's safe place. He became her reason to smile. Sometimes he asked about her life. She gave small answers. She did not want him to carry her pain, but children notice what adults try to hide. "You're always tired," Daniel once said. Mercy smiled gently. That's what working hard looks like. Weeks passed, and their bond deepened. Mercy began skipping meals to save more food. She felt weak some days, but she told herself it was temporary. Kindness always asked for something in return. One evening, Mrs. Whitmore called Mercy into the living room. "I've noticed food going missing," she said sharply. Mercy's heart raced. "I only take what I'm given for lunch," Mercy replied carefully. "Then why do you come back hungry?" Mrs. Whitmore asked. Mercy hesitated. "There's a child," she said softly. "He has no food." Mrs. Whitmore's eyes hardened. "That is not our responsibility." The warning was clear. Mercy returned to her room knowing she was walking a dangerous line. Still, she could not stop. Some bonds were stronger than fear. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do well to subscribe to this channel. By doing so, you help us share more stories that transform lives. In the comments, tell us how this story speaks to you. Mercy waited by the school fence longer than she ever had before. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement, but Daniel never appeared. At first, she told herself he was late. Children got distracted, life happened, but as the minutes stretched into an hour, a sharp unease settled in her chest. Daniel had never missed a day without telling her. Never. She asked one of the students passing by if they had seen him. The child shrugged and walked away. A janitor mentioned something under his breath about a boy caught stealing. Mercy's heart skipped. She followed the trail of whispers through the neighborhood until they led her to the small police station at the corner of Main Street. The building smelled of stale air and authority. Inside, she saw Daniel sitting on a hard bench behind iron bars. His torn uniform was now dirt-stained, his hands trembling in his lap. One of his shoes was missing. When he saw Mercy, his face crumpled. "I didn't steal," he said quickly, fear cracking his voice. "They said I took bread, but I didn't. A man gave it to me, then shouted when the owner came." Mercy stepped forward, gripping the bars. "He's a child," she pleaded to the officer nearby. "He's hungry. That doesn't make him a criminal." The officer barely looked at her. "We hear that every day," he said. "Poverty isn't an excuse." Those words cut deeper than any insult Mercy had ever endured. Poverty isn't an excuse, as if hunger were a choice, as if desperation were a crime. Daniel spent the night in holding. Mercy went home shaking, her faith in quiet goodness shattered. The next morning, rumors spread quickly. The poor boy who stole, the maid who encouraged him. Mrs. Whitmore confronted Mercy before breakfast. "I heard about the boy," she said coldly. "And I heard you were involved." Mercy tried to explain, but explanations sounded like excuses to people who had never known need. By evening, Mercy was dismissed from her job. No farewell, no severance, just a warning to stay away from trouble. With no income and nowhere to go, Mercy realized that kindness had cost her everything she had left. Daniel was released days later, but the damage had already been done. He was expelled from school. His mother's health worsened. Doors closed everywhere they turned. One evening, Daniel stood outside Mercy's rented room, guilt heavy on his face. "I'm sorry," he said. Mercy shook her head, tears forming. "Never apologize for surviving," she told him. But deep down, she feared the world would never forgive either of them for daring to hope. Time passed the way it always did, indifferently. Mercy aged quickly under the weight of struggle. She worked odd jobs, cleaned where she could, slept where she was allowed. Some nights she wondered if she had been foolish to care so deeply. Yet every time she questioned her choices, She remembered Daniel's eyes the first day she fed him, and the doubt faded. Daniel's life took a harder path. Without school, he worked menial jobs, endured exploitation, and faced rejection after rejection. But something Mercy had given him could not be taken away: the belief that he mattered. Years later, that belief became his fuel. He studied at night, borrowed books, asked questions, failed, tried again. Against all odds, Daniel clawed his way forward. Mercy never knew. She assumed life had swallowed him the way it swallowed so many poor children. One rainy afternoon, a knock came at her door. A man stood there, well-dressed, confident, familiar. It took her a moment to recognize him. "It's me," he said softly. "Daniel." Mercy's knees weakened. She stared in disbelief as the boy in the torn uniform stood before her as a man shaped by struggle and determination. Daniel told her everything: how her kindness had kept him alive, how her belief had carried him through darkness, how he had never forgotten the woman who fed him when the world looked away. He had returned not out of success alone, but gratitude. Daniel helped Mercy rebuild her life, but more than that, he restored her faith. The world had punished her kindness, but it had not erased it. It had multiplied it. And Mercy finally understood the truth she had lived by without knowing. Kindness does not always save you immediately, but it always saves someone, and sometimes that someone comes back to save you too. She was an invisible maid. He was a hungry boy in a torn uniform. One small act of kindness changed their lives and cost her everything. When the world punished compassion, neither knew that hope was only waiting to return.